of the views and opinions expressed here are those of the individual speaking and may not be representative of Konig American. At times, language may be considered vulgar. Listener discretion is suggested.
You are now listening to the Konig Behind the Wheel podcast.
What's going on? I'm Scott from Konig. With me is Jared from Konig. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Wheel podcast. Listen, we hope you're doing well. It's been an interesting week around here. But anyhow, with that all said, we have a really cool guest with us.
I would say so.
I want to tell you that you should have watched The Hype is Right from last week.
Yes.
It's really important. I don't know why you're not. A lot of people are watching some of these, and I think you're missing out. So go over there and check it out. But with that said, I don't think we have anything else. I want to get right into our guest only here.
Oh, well, the only thing I guess worth mentioning is just that
new piece of content Friday?
On Friday we're going to do, I believe we're going to do a wheel tech.
We do.
So
yeah, we're going to do that. And, and also if anybody wants to get super triggered and bring their opinion into things, last week on the podcast, I talked about the RPM Act and kind of what it means for us as motorsport enthusiasts. So if you want to rip me apart, or if you would like to head over there and actually supply some positive comments, that's a good place to do it. Again, only found on YouTube. Let's see. All right, so getting to our guest here. This gentleman, if you are following Konig, you know who he is because we have been riding with him for more than a few years now, and he's super quick, super fast. I don't know how else to put that in a better sense, but James Houghton, he's from Canada. Don't hold that against him. And he is probably one of the fastest time attack drivers out there, especially for front wheel drive.
And that's saying a lot.
Yeah. And he's built some cool cars. I'm gonna put my headphones on so I can hear him, because if not, anyhow, I want to get James in here. James, hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for. I know you're usually working at this time, so thanks for taking a break to hang out with us.
Nice to have a little break for a bit.
Yeah. Well, you guys are probably coming out of your rush, right?
Our rush kind of slows down in December at work, so we're kind of actually gearing back up to be a little bit busier now.
Oh, that's cool. So you own. Tell everybody what you do, so that it makes sense what I just said.
So a lot of people won't understand this because a lot of people are from a climate that they don't put salt on the roads, but right. We put an excessive amount of salt on the roads in Canada, way more than we need, and our cars rust like crazy. And we do a process called rust proofing. We spray a petroleum type product on the bottom of the vehicle and in the doors and in all the critical areas, and try to keep vehicles lasting a little bit longer,
right,
or a lot longer in some scenarios.
Yeah, and to give a good, I'm sure this is exactly what you're talking about, but basically, like, anybody who's ever fabricated chassis or done any work where they're restoring chassis, you'll know that before you go and seal up like rockers or anything like that, usually what you do is you shoot some of this like oil type product, which James has mentioned, that petroleum type product, because the oil will keep things from rusting inside, where you'll never see them until, well, there's a hole in the side because it rusted through.
Yeah.
So that's what they do up there in Canada. But what's interesting is you've had a lot of different things going on for you in this past year and a half. The pandemic affected racers in different ways than maybe some other motorsport enthusiasts, and you probably being the most unique in the sense that you being in Canada, just mileage-wise, in comparison to maybe some of those drivers in Michigan, not so far off, but border-wise, you might as well be in another, well, I don't want to say another country, but,
We might as well be in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
It's like, really, it's tough. Yeah. I mean, we built the TSX for Grid Life Touring Cup in a very short amount of time last winter.
Yeah.
With the goal to debut it at COTA last year for the Super Lap Battle / Grid Life Touring Cup kind of special weekend there. And it was great. We got it done just in the nick of time. And, even when we were on our way to that event, you started hearing about what was going on. Like, that was February, right? So there was still, started a little bit of chatter and stuff like that about COVID and everything. But you don't, when you've never experienced something like that before, you don't really think about, you're not like, well, we won't be going to the next event. You're like, you're on your way home after a good event. You're like, can't wait for the next one. A few
Yeah.
weeks later, they're like, the border's closed. And, a year later now it's still closed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to base a program and to run these programs where so many of the events that you have on your schedule, your public schedule, are in the U.S., but you physically can't come to the U.S.
Exactly. I mean, if it would have happened another year, like when we were campaigning the Integra or something like that, it wouldn't even have necessarily been quite as bad, because we have lots of great time attack events up here too. But when we built this TSX specifically for the Grid Life Touring Cup class,
yeah,
and then your, our wheel to wheel series are quite, structured quite a bit differently up here. There was no, real good competitive place to run it, comparatively speaking.
right.
Well,
We still ran it a bunch. We still had lots of fun with it, but it's not the same as, building it for this very particular rule set.
Right. So, and that was the new thing. That was the change in pace. We had talked about that a lot, you and I, about you making the transition and going to something where there would be more to wheel racing type of emphasis, and going from that time attack to wheel. Well, you've had experience in wheel to wheel before this.
Yep. I've done some Chump Car, now Champ Car series stuff. I've even done a little bit of kind of less formal wheel to wheel stuff with the Integra, but never building a car for a class 2 sprint race, against a bunch of other, really competitive cars that are also built for that particular class. So, although I felt comfortable right from the beginning, it was definitely a different flavor, if you will, than what I was used to.
So, real quick, because I think we have to talk about the story about how the TSX, I think, even surprised you on the platform, right? But before we even get there, give people a quick overview. If you're in time attack now and have never done any wheel to wheel racing, or if you're going to put together obviously a car to compete in, specifically in GLTC, what's the transition like? What kind of things do you have to be prepared? Let's say if you're not building a whole new car.
I think that one of the really interesting things about GLTC is that it's more of a builder class than a lot of wheel to wheel classes. You go to some races and it's going to be a huge amount of the same type of car, even though it's not specifically requiring that. There'll be a lot of the same. It's amazing. Like, you look at this past a couple weeks ago at COTA this year, which sadly we weren't able to attend.
Yeah.
C5 Corvette, NC Miata, NA Miata, EG Civic, Porsche Cayman, like, BMWs, like the list goes on and on. It's crazy. There's events where there's been Mercedes, 190s and stuff like that, and older Volkswagens. And it's just like amazing to see such a, variation of cars, and, so many of them competing together, and amazing how many different people and different car combos have won in a series that's only, 3 years old realistically at this point.
Yeah. But what is the transition like as you go from being a time attack driver into a wheel to wheel type series? What kind of things do you think, the learning curve has to be built up on?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Looking at a rule set differently, you look at a rule set for a time attack class, and it doesn't matter if the car is a ticking time bomb, right? You build it to be absolutely as fast as possible. And if it grenades the gearbox every third session, well, if you're willing to change that, then so be it.
Yeah.
Fastest lap for the weekend wins. But in a GLTC weekend, it's scored over 4 races over the course of the weekend. So you need to have 4 good finishes if you want to come away with the weekend win, like we were lucky to be able to at COTA when we were there.
Yeah.
So, you have to build a reliable car. You have to build a car that's maybe not as hard to drive as a time attack car. A time attack car can be on a limit if you get 2 good laps over the course of a weekend, because it's such a animal to drive. That's okay. When you're doing 4 15-minute races over the course of a weekend and quali, you have to have a car that's repeatable, that's reliable, and it still has to be fast. So you really, you really have to get the balance there.
So this is a good segue. So let's tell everybody, and I could tell everybody, but it's way better coming from you, about the Integra, because this is the platform that you spent years developing, and this is where you really made your claim as being known by other drivers as one of the real competitors, chasing guys like Will and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Integra was an interesting deal. I had a Subaru STI before that I was doing a little bit of tracking with, and it wasn't the most reliable vehicle, as so many Subaru people kind of know and accept, but love them anyways.
Now right? Everybody's like, whoa, come on. The Subarus are totally reliable.
I had a ringland failure at 4,000 kilometers on a brand new 07 STI. So
wait,
come
what's
at me,
your point?
bro, with the totally reliable.
Wait, hold on a second. I know where this is going.
EJ forever.
I need to preempt the comments. Everybody's going to say, well, everybody knows that the 07 had a problem.
Right.
Right? But after that and before that, totally fine.
And to be fair, I absolutely love that car. It was a
Yeah.
fantastic car. I put like 30,000 miles on that car in a year and a half. It was an absolutely great car. I just didn't really appreciate how I was dealt with at the dealership over that. And I was kind of just put a sour taste in my mouth, but I actually really enjoyed tracking it. It was a fantastic time. So no hate to the Subarus at all. But it was a fairly new car. I was planning on buying a house. It was a good time to get out of that car and get something a little bit cheaper. And I was a Honda guy before I was a Subaru guy. So, a pretty good deal came up on a 98 Integra Type R that was mostly stock. And I thought, I think I'm going to pull the trigger on this thing. And now to upset the Type R lovers and the Subaru lovers, then I drove that car in the winter for the first 2 years.
Well, I think what's so aggravating now is that if you had just kept it original, we could have sold it.
Wouldn't that have been glorious? Yeah. Instead of spending a couple of $100,000 on it and selling it for X, you could have spent zero on it and sold it for X still.
And got a second house.
Yeah, no kidding. But no regrets on that car. I mean, the friendships I've made and the experiences I've had with that car over the years have been life-changing. And so I bought it in fall of 2009. Summer of 2010, we did our first time attack event with it, and just like an entry-level street class. It was a smaller event up here. Went in with no expectations. It was like a cheap track day, and they included lunch, and they had if you won your class, they had just 2 classes, and if you won your class, you got your registration fee back. And I'm like,
by the way,
I want to see
events that include lunch. Those are my type of event.
All you can eat pizza. It was great.
Are you kidding me? I would have paid to join the event just for the pizza.
Well, and like I say, the cool thing was if you won your class, which they just had the 2 basic classes, it was super, just pretty basic event. You got your entry fee back. So I was like,
free
this
pizza.
is it was great.
Yeah.
So I had never been super competitive with the Subaru. It was like much better set up, like to be a fun daily driver than a competitive car. But I was going a little bit. So I had no expectations, but I was looking forward to it. And we won that first event. And I was we were kind of hooked after that.
Yeah.
Now our class was more like, I think in our class you had to be on street tires, and it was for their classes were a little bit different. It was for a certain engine displacement and stuff like that. So it was cars that were like what I was competing with there, but it was super fun, and I was kind of hooked, and we started doing more events after that. And then every winter the car just progressed a little bit crazier and a little bit crazier. I drove it on the street for the next few years while competing with it. Then around 2013, I stopped driving it on the street, and it was track only, and we started competing at a higher level with it on slicks and stuff like that. And probably around 2016, 2017, things got really out of hand. We started competing more in the US, and in 2017 at the Grid Life Midwest Festival at Gingerman Raceway, we set the overall production car track record at that track. And that was when things kind of like, we're like, all right, this is this is kind of getting to be a thing, right? That was any car that had originally been sold with a VIN number, we had beaten anyone that had ever been there. And
which is
we had a fierce
crazy
battle. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I want to stop there for a second. I don't want to let this moment go by for people and it just become a stat. That is a big deal. Think about the cars. Like, list out the cars that people would hear and know. Like, any VIN vehicle that competed.
Well, when Dodge were going around setting all their track records with the ACR Viper,
right,
that was one of the tracks they went to, and I believe they did a 31 there, a 131. We did a 127 that weekend.
Jesus. Guys, that's not
insane.
You're not talking about like a little bit of time. When you have 4.5 seconds roughly, that's a major amount of time.
It was pretty exciting, and that weekend was not without it was crazy. I mean, Will and I were having an intense battle that weekend, and we were battling from the first day. Like, a couple of practice sessions on the first day, we were back and forth trading fastest laps, and then we broke our gearbox, and we were trying to fix. We had a backup gearbox there that the ratios weren't quite as good in, so we spent all night trying to fix the main gearbox. At 5 o'clock in the morning, we called it and put the backup gearbox in. I've been lucky to have the absolute best guys to help me out over the years. And I said to the guys, we got to get that other gearbox in, and I got to get like 2 hours of sleep. Otherwise, I'm not going to be, I can't try to set this record. Like, in Time Attack, your morning session is usually the one where you put everything on the lines for, and at this point, this was Saturday morning. We knew we had one chance Saturday and one chance Sunday. So I said, I'm going to try to get 3 hours of sleep. We'll get the backup gearbox in. We had low expectations because the ratios were not very good in the backup trans. And we went out first lap that Saturday morning and set the record on that backup gearbox. And that was probably one of the most exciting events that I had, after that, especially being a Grid Life Festival event. There's just so much fun. There's so much partying going on and everything. That was a heck of a time.
So I don't know this because obviously I've never raced in anything Grid Life, but so do you use headphones? Like, are you communicating with teams, or that doesn't happen until you get out of the car?
I don't think we put the radios in that car until the year after that, I believe. I think the next year we might have put them in. We might have actually had them in at that point, but I just can't remember at what year. I think it might have been the following year that we put the radio in the car, just so we can communicate with our team.
Yeah, so walk me through it. You come in, you finish your lap, you come in, and how does this whole thing when do you find out that this is the time?
So for some reason, we were also, to add like drama to that weekend, we were having a little bit of problem with our telemetry in our car. So I had no idea what lap time I turned.
Yeah.
Like, I come in, I'm like, felt pretty good, but like, I knew that the ratios weren't great in the gearbox. So I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. And you have to understand that my whole life, I've been the guy that people mess with. Like, everyone messes with me all the time. So I come in and my team just stares, straight faces me. No excitement at all. I've just set the overall production base record for this thing.
Right.
And the time was fast enough that we were pretty confident that we had probably won the whole damn event, right? And my whole team straight faces me. And I was expecting, I think at that point we had done a high 129. I was expecting to go maybe a high 128 might be the record for the weekend or something like that, right? I didn't know, we knew Will was going to go fast. I didn't know what was going to happen. I come in and my brother-in-law greets me at the car. Eric that was with us, he's got a bad leg, so he doesn't run back over. So he walks over and my brother-in-law runs over and gets me out. And he looks at me as stone cold as you can possibly be and says, I forget the time, but I think Will did a 128.3. And he looks at me and he says, Will did a 28.3. And I'm like heartbroken. I can feel like we slept like not at all. So much work going into this event. And I'm like broken inside, right? I know that the A gearbox can't be fixed for the weekend. I'm like, there's in my mind in this like 1 second that passes, I'm like, well, might as well just call it. pauses for a second after he says that. He says, and you just did a 27.8.
No way.
I've never
Yeah.
screamed so loud in my entire life. It was wild. We had a leaking head gasket that weekend, so we were having to rebleed the cooling system after every session.
Jeez.
You know, the whole thing was just drama filled. And when they said you did a 27.8, I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I was, you know, you talk about being overwhelmed. That was overwhelming.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That
And
is
it's,
nuts.
you know, you see, and that's the real stuff, right? Like, that's the part that so many people that aren't necessarily competitive, like, they're not competitive in motorsports. They don't understand, like, you rarely will have an outing where you don't have issues, right? So it's like, you know, the exhausting part is not just driving. It's everything that leads up to. You got the whole prep of the car, the travel to get there, then you get there, then you got to deal with all the crap that happens while you're at the track. Then you're scrambling, running around, trying to get the car. But, you know, this is the stuff that will make or break your success for a weekend. I mean, look, you ran on all spare parts, and a head gasket problem.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
insane.
it was one for the memories, that's for sure. And our teammate Chris Boersma had a great event that weekend. He did really well, and they let us go out on the track that night. Some of the teams could go out and take pictures, and you know, the big festival going on in the background. And we were parked out in turn 2 and took a big team photo in front of Chris's car and my car with the whole festival going on in the background. And then we went over to the festival and, you know, participated in maybe a few alcoholic beverages after that until no later than 10 o'clock for sure.
Of course,
We were for
that's
sure in bed by
cutoff
10.
time. That's where you stop. Yeah. No, I get that. Before we move on to the TSX, because the TSX is a cool story, and we were there from the beginning, so I got to kind of have the behind the scenes, and then I got to see what it was like when it first made it to an event.
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the things, and we've talked about this with Chris before, but we get a lot of questions, and there's a lot of misinformation when we start talking about the reverse stagger on a front-wheel drive car. Can you help people understand the reason that you would run a wider wheel in the front versus the rear, and, you know, how, like, give the benefit list? Because I think the problem is people are so fixated on, oh, well, it just gives you more grip, and that's not the whole story.
No, there's so much more to it than that. And as I've gotten older and explained this to more people, I've come up, you know, thought about it more and come up with more ideas. With modern tires, it's probably actually nothing wrong with running a large tire square. Modern street tires work with almost no temperature at all. I mean, we run Yokohama AO52s on the TSX. They work from like ambient temperature. So a couple of things are, you know, you want to run the largest tire on the front of a front-wheel drive car that you're legally allowed. You're asking the front tires on a front-wheel drive car to brake, to turn, to accelerate. They're just overtaxed. And on a front-wheel drive car, you're usually dealing with a terrible weight bias compared to a rear-wheel drive car. You know, a lot of the GLTC cars or a lot of the rear-wheel drive GLTC cars are going to be 50-50. Some are, you know, 52. The Corvette, it's new C5 build from Jeremy Swenson's 47-53, like 53% rear weight. The TSX, when we went to COTA, was 63-37. You know, it's got 63% of the weight of the entire car on the front axle. It's a lot of weight to carry around, right?
And that's different. Like when you go to turn in and you brake like that, you know, you get that shift of weight, even if you're corner balanced, right? Like you still have a transfer of momentum.
Yeah, I mean, even before the transfer of weight, you're starting with a lot. Like when we were at COTA last year, the front two tires of the car weighed 1,700 pounds. It's quite a bit of weight for just two tires to carry around, right?
Yeah.
So you're wanting to put as large a tire as you can up front. We would probably test more if the car was flared in the back and we weren't worried about rolling resistance and we weren't worried about aero drag. We would probably actually test a square tire, but, you know, it's often easier to bolt on a wide fender on the front than it is to kind of totally re-engineer the rear quarter panel of the car.
Yeah.
So we ended up kind of where we were at with that. But I think another really good way to explain it is look at any Porsche, look at any Ferrari or Lamborghini or anything like that. Any car that usually has that 65-35 or 60-40 weight distribution with the lighter end up front, they always run a much narrower tire in the front. So we're just kind of doing the reverse of that.
Right. But when it comes down to running that bigger wheel in the front, there's other gains you get because you're not just staggering in width. A lot of times you're also increasing in height.
Depending, yeah, that is the case sometimes. I like to try to run the same height front and rear, because when you run the rear of the car slightly higher than the front, that's called rake. And rake can help give the front end more. When you have the back end higher than the front, a very small amount, I'm not talking a huge amount, can help give the front more grip again. So typically we would actually try to run as close in overall diameter in the rear as the front, to try to keep that weight, or that pressure on the front tires with the rake of the car. Now, sometimes we have ran smaller wheel in the back, but then we would run a larger sidewall to end up at a similar overall diameter. Like on the Integra, we always ran an 18/11 in the front and then a 17/9 in the back. But we ran a larger sidewall in the back, so we ended up still with about a 25-inch overall diameter.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like to see, because the difference too in a rear-wheel drive car. I mean, yeah, you talked about the weight balance, but like you'll hear people say, oh, well, like on a rear-wheel drive car, of course it's reverse, but it's not just about the weight distribution. That's where the power is getting put in. And so it's the same type of thing. Now you have the power coming from the front. But the car, one's pushing, one's pulling.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at a rear-wheel drive car, your rear tires are trying to apply power, which is very important. And your front tires are doing the majority of your cornering force, which is, I shouldn't say a majority, but they're a very important factor in your ability to go around a corner fast. Sure. Also important. In a front-wheel drive car, your front tires are braking, accelerating, and steering, and your rear tires are, other than a little bit of braking force, literally only there to keep you from spinning out. So it's quite a different deal, and that's the reason why in the Integra we were able to run a 315 front tire and a 225 rear and have really no issue, because we were mostly handling the balance with aerodynamics, and at low speed corners we didn't really have any issues with not enough rear grip. So we were able to save weight. We were able to save, aerodynamic losses, and it worked fine.
Yeah, and that's really, like, you just summed up really I almost want to say the trifecta there, right? Because the front tires on a front-wheel drive car, they have to do so much more. You know what I mean? You could outrun the tires on a front-wheel drive car, with big power way faster than you probably could a rear-wheel drive car with big power,
Exactly. I mean, we would overheat a 315 tire on the front of the Integra in 2 laps.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy.
The thing you think you run a tire that's that large to not have to worry about overheating it, and completely overheated in 2 laps.
So, what's the solution for that? Like when you get to that point, is that immediately a tire change? Is there anything that you can do to take some of that heat out of the tire?
Oh, there's so much you can do. The better you have your handling balance, the less work you're going to put on the front tire. So if you can get the car pointed straighter sooner, via more rotation in the middle of a corner, you're able to drive off of a corner straighter.
Right. If
you can drive off of the corner straighter, you're not sliding the tire sideways and trying to put power down in a straight line at the same time. Yeah, that's a huge. In a lot of track days and events and everything like that, you'll see front wheel drive cars going much slower than their rear wheel drive counterparts, when in reality, yes, it is a hindrance, but it's a much smaller hindrance once the car is really, really well dialed in.
Yeah, it's just it's a different platform. So let's make the jump now. So you come from this platform and this car inside and out. And now you decide that you're going to build this, the Grid Life car and this TSX. So let's talk about the adventure here. We go get a car. You're from Canada. You go where to pick up the TSX?
We go to Kentucky.
Is exactly where I would think you would go to get a TSX.
First place I would look.
Most interesting thing about this is I was planning on building another Integra. We knew Integras well. I liked them, had lots of parts that could transfer back and forth and stuff like that. And Adam Jabay from Grid Life, he knew that GLTC is kind of like his baby. And he knew that I was completely, intoxicated with that series. I thought that it's like, to me, it's probably one of the best wheel-to-wheel racing series anywhere in the world. I think it's just fantastic. And I've been, hounding him and joking with him about, what we're going to build and how we're going to do it and everything like that. And he says, I have a car that I think you should have a look at. And I said, okay, what is it? He said, it's a TSX. And I'm kind of like, all right. I mean, kind of weird, kind of bigger than I had thought. I had never really put any thought into it. And he sends me, the contact info for his friend Nick. And Nick and I get chatting back and forth. He starts sending me pictures and stuff like that. And I think this is a really cool car. And I start doing some research about it and, behind the scenes, find out that it has one of the best coefficient of drags of any sedan ever. It has 0.27 coefficient of drag. A first gen Insight is 0.26. It's unbelievable. And when you're trying to compete with these low horsepower cars, anything you can gain there is better. It's not like, some of the modern time attack cars, which are in traction control till 100 miles an hour, right? Coefficient of drag doesn't matter that much when you're literally limiting horsepower halfway down the straightaway. We use all of it at all times. So I was kind of more inclined. The price was right on it. Came with lots of really cool parts, lots of stuff that we were going to be able to use. And we chatted back and forth. And after a couple of weeks, I said, I think I want this, but it was our busy season at the shop. We were going into the fall when it's our busiest time of the year. We still had a bunch of events that we were doing with the Integra. PRI was coming up. There was so much stuff going on. I'm like, I don't even know when I'm going to be able to pick this car up. We were hoping to go to COTA, but it wasn't like a for sure thing. I said, I'm going to send you the deposit. Please don't screw me on this. I don't even know when I can come. I hope it's not in your way. And we ended up not even going to get it for about 3 months after that. So luckily we had gotten rid of our work truck a little while ago, and we got an extended Chevy van. And it was really good because the amount of stuff that Nick had for that car was unbelievable. There was 4 of us in the van, and we had just like the 2 front captain's chairs and the 1 bench in it. And an extended van is like 10 feet long behind that.
Yeah.
And that thing was full, and the trailer was full. All the cabinets were full. Everything was full. It was unbelievable how many spares and everything that he had acquired for that. So we got the car back and started going over things. And, I started selling some of the things that we didn't need for it. Started prepping what we could prep, got the interior painted and stuff like that. And over the course of Christmas and New Year's, we decided we're going to do a big push to try to make it for COTA. And the guys at Unit 2 Fabrication just went crazy. Unit 2 Fabric. Oh, I can't see. I got the shirt on, but the camera's on the wrong angle.
Stand up, James. Let's take it for a walk.
There we go. Oh, you hear that? Oh no, that was a trick. You wanted him to hit his head. You forgot he's in the RV.
Yeah. So those guys just went wild at it. Most of the build was done on that car in about 4 weeks. And this is from a car that had no engine, no trans, no subframe, no suspension, no interior at all. Just like a painted shell. And they assembled that thing in 4 weeks. Not a ton of fabrication, but enough fabrication, air dam, rad duct, exhaust. They built a nice, beautiful 3-inch titanium exhaust for it. Assemble the trans, assemble a motor, on and on and on. It was quite a procedure to do, but we were all, it's kind of winter's long up here, and we were kind of looking forward to getting away. And COTA is Circuit of the Americas is an amazing facility. It's super fun to attend an event there. So they did the big push and got it on the dyno the week of, and everything was looking pretty good. And it was a crazy story on the way down. We went to to NCM, to the National Corvette Museum track, to test on the way down. Matt Busby, the track manager there, I had reached out and I said, do you have anything going on? I know this is a complete shot in the dark, but would there be any chance of us getting out on their way down just so we could know that the car drives? We hadn't even driven the car except for in the parking lot in the snow. And he says, come on down, man. We'll check it out. We'll see how it goes. We did. We drove all night, no sleep at all. Got there at noon the next day. Like, we were literally working on the car until 1:30 in the morning. Finished it, put it in the trailer.
Back to Kentucky?
God.
What's that?
The National Corvette Museum. Where is that?
So we went to Kentucky on the way to Texas.
That's right. So this car somehow is a magnet for Kentucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So we get everything all finished up. We load it up. We roll out at 1:30 in the morning with the whole team. We drive straight through the National Corvette Museum, and everyone was so dead from building the car, and I help where I can, but I don't do as much as the rest of the guys. So I drove as much as I could. I probably drove about 9 of the 12 hours or whatever that night, or not, 8 of the 10 hours or something like that. We get there. I'm like a zombie, but I'm like, I got to figure this out. We got to put a couple laps down to make sure everything functions. And it was great. I mean, it's an amazing facility. I'm sad that we haven't been able to be back to it yet with the border closure. Grid Life are going there in a couple weeks. It'll be fun to watch that event online. But it was like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The track was half wet. I'd never even driven a TSX before in my life, not even any TSX, let alone this car. And I'm out there trying to learn the track with this thing. And I couldn't believe how good it was. We ended up having a couple of little issues with it. Nothing that was too big, but we needed to overnight some parts. So we were able to overnight some parts to a friend's shop in Austin, Texas, which is, when you think about this was Thursday. So we were getting the parts on Friday. If we would have tested somewhere in Texas on Friday, we wouldn't have even got parts, right? Like, who knows if you're going to get Saturday delivery, right? So we were super lucky to get that. So we left NCM in the early afternoon. We drive straight through to Texas. We get there Friday morning. We get our parts. We change our stuff in the parking lot, at Coda. And everything worked out pretty great after that. We did the event. We qualified P2. We won the first 2 races. We had a little problem in race 3, but we were able to get back out there after a little stop in the pits. And we won race 4, and we won our first weekend.
It's crazy. It's like first
I'm
time
tired.
out.
I'm sorry. I'm just tired listening to all that. Like,
it was
now I just wanna
bad.
Sleep.
Yeah, you leave in the middle of the night to drive to a track in Kentucky, and then you test there for a bit, and then you leave there in the night and drive to Texas. Like, no sleep. Why would you sleep? You could be racing. You don't be sleeping.
Yeah, well, I guess. Except if you fall asleep while you're racing and then you die. But this is a brand new platform. The first time it's ever been out. The first time you've been behind the wheel of it. And a relatively just new build in the sense that this was a far departure from your time attack car.
For sure. I mean, luckily, lots of friends that have built, milder front wheel drive cars and stuff like that over the years. And I've always been able to keep lots of seat time in naturally aspirated front wheel drive cars over the last, 8 years since the Integra got kind of crazy. So I had a good idea with, kind of what route we wanted to go, and, great sponsors on board to make sure we had everything we needed to make the car as competitive as possible. But as far as, spring rates, sway bars, alignment specs, setup, everything like that, you can take a shot in the dark, and every once in a while you'll get lucky. And, it was an educated guess, but I'm we'll take give full disclosure that there was luck involved in that. That car worked really well from the first lap.
Yeah. So let's do a quick comparison. Time Attack Integra makes X amount of horse. How much power does it make when you retired it?
800 wheel.
TSX, how much power does it make?
When we raced at Coda, 237. Do
you have the curb weight? So the weight with driver on the Integra?
It was about 2575.
TSX?
2760.
That's pretty good.
Top speed at Coda. 132 TSX. 170 Integra.
I mean, look, these are different cars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's easy for people that don't necessarily kind of conceptualize the major difference, to look at them and go, Integra, TSX, both Honda platforms, but these are not the same cars. You didn't, It's not like you built an Integra and then got into another Integra and had this success. You got into a totally different machine.
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of went through the TSX and learned some of the things about it, I think every step of the way we were more and more impressed what Acura and Honda did with that car. Just every aspect of it, the suspension geometry, the way they did things, the aerodynamics of it, the room for big tires, like literally a bolt-on over fender in the front and 315 tires on an 11-inch wheel fits. You can even run it at a pretty low ride height. There's all kinds of room above. You hear about people tubbing the front wheel wells of cars all the time. There's no tubbing on a TSX. You can put that thing on the ground with a 315 on an 18-inch wheel. There's tons of space. Nothing even hammered in the wheel wells.
Let me just say real quick.
Yeah.
I find it so particularly impressive from the standpoint that when I see TSXs around the road on here, around these parts, like I would never think that it would be like a solid time attack car.
Well, and
it's wild.
The TSX that they developed, I mean, it's good looking. I mean, it's like
the
car looks super tough. So
it's just crazy to me.
But what I was gonna say on the TSX is, so everybody knows that the TSX shares a platform with the Accord.
Correct.
Does this mean the same thing holds true as far as if you were to build an Accord?
Correct. And the funny thing is a JDM European, Australian, whatever Accord looks like a TSX.
Right.
But a North American 03 to 07 Accord doesn't look like a TSX, but shares all the suspension and geometry and everything like that. Funny thing is 04 to 08 TL also the same.
Oh, okay. But now the TL in the later years came with a much different engine package.
Yeah, so 04 to 08 TLs were all the V6. But as far as, shock interchangeability, control arm, sway bar, all that stuff, all interchangeable between all three of those chassis.
The TSX K20 is in it?
K24.
Okay. But now I'm trying to the Accord would have come with a K24.
Yeah, K24 or a V6 depending on the
Which
model.
one you got. But
Yeah, the Accord's K24 though was a lower horsepower variant than the TSX. It was a 160 versus the TSX's 200.
Now, is that all done like in the head and tuning, or is there a compression ratio difference?
Accords actually had a funny motor. You can't put people put K20 heads on K24s all the time. You can't do that on an Accord motor unless you change the pistons, because the pistons are actually weird. It's like, I forget what it's called, but it's something to do with like the compression height of the piston. The piston actually comes out
of the combustion chamber. It comes up into
but not just like the dome of the piston. The actual whole piston comes out of it.
So what, the rings set lower? Like the rings?
I think something like that. It's super weird. Like if you want to put a K20 head on an Accord motor, you have to put TSX pistons in it.
Okay, so it's almost like, I wonder if it's the rod length, like the actual stroke kind of thing.
I think so. Stroke is the same. I think it's more to do with just the piston design.
So weird.
Well,
it is weird.
What are they? Would they be like flat tops?
No,
or are they going to be like?
He's talking about the height that it protrudes past the deck of the block.
Yeah.
I bet you it's an emissions thing.
Huh.
Maybe so. The funny thing though was that the CRV was the same horsepower as the Accord. But you could put a K20 head on a CRV. Of course, manufacturers doing things just to be different sometimes, right?
I guess. But listen, the big lesson here is because 03 to 07 Accords here, dirt. Just absolute dirt.
TSX is pretty cheap though now too. Like,
that's fair.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm just saying to people out there, hey, look, you're looking to do some autocross cars. Of course, you can go ahead and get yourself some, STIs and Evos, and you can come up with some bigger dollar cars. But there's other alternatives out there.
Oh, for sure. If you wanted to get really aggressive with the weight reduction on a TSX, but still like it's still a street car, and you want to gut it like you'd gut, a Civic hatchback or something like that, there's a lot of weight to come out of one of those cars. I'm not a light guy. It has an overbuilt cage in the car, and we had that car down to 2,750 pounds.
Yeah.
If you had a lighter driver with no cage or a lighter cage, that car is, not going to be that heavy. There's a lot of stuff in it from the factory, and that's why they start out life at 3,250. But you could easily have one well under 3,000 pounds and still drive it on the street.
Well, I had an 04, so 04 Accord, so I know that there's they save plenty of weight on the sheet metal.
Oh no!
You just lean up against that car a little bit the wrong way, and all of a sudden the panel's dipping. But it's interesting, and I think that's a good takeaway for people. You're getting started in motorsports. If you can find, I know it is tough to find manual Accords, especially here.
Gen Civic or something like that, and swap the trans in. You can swap the internals, but the case has to stay the same because the case, the engine mounts in that car are different. Another weird tidbit, but a cool thing, but not that cool anymore. TSX transmissions have a magnesium case. The manual transmissions in the TSX are magnesium case, which is cool. It's much lighter. It's almost 10 pounds lighter. But
weld to it?
No. They wear over time, and we actually had a gearbox failure last year because I was like, rah, we got to run the light gearbox. Like 3 events later, I think of the bearing on the counter shaft the bearing was like loose in the transmission case, and we had a gearbox failure because of that. So we went to the Accord case after that. But
Wow.
Kind of cool that they were trying that hard to make that car cool, that they would use magnesium for a case.
Yeah, it's interesting the things that manufacturers do. And, I wish that we had the ability to ask them why they did certain things, because some of them are off the wall. But then there's other ones where clearly that decision to go magnesium versus, let's say, an aluminum case or something was completely intentional. Like there was a real reason there.
What's funny about that, though, is we joke because a TL front subframe is aluminum and weighs like quite significantly, less than the TSX subframe. But the TL gets an aluminum transmission case. The TSX gets a magnesium case, but then they do something, I imagine magnesium's harder to get, harder to work with. Why wouldn't they just put the aluminum subframe like the TL had in the TSX and use a regular aluminum transmission case? Who knows? They do weird stuff.
Yeah, and price point, I'm sure, plays into some factor there,
But wouldn't you think that'd be better just to run one subframe for all the cars instead of making multiple different transmission cases?
I've thought a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean crap anymore,
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
So what's the plan now? So you're kind of, first off, do you have they talked about the border opening as far as definitive dates yet?
What they do is they just push it back every month, each month. So each month they push it back another month. And it's like, so you really have no idea. Like originally it was like, well, it's going to be closed till April of 2020 now. And then they've just pushed it back 1 month at a time until April of 2021. Things are looking better and better all the time. We cross our fingers to hope that things are going to be better sooner than later. I mean, I'm always worried about older relatives and stuff like that. I work with my parents. They're 72 and 66. They both have their first half of their Pfizer vaccine, so that's pretty good. So if I had to go to an event in the States, I would be a little bit less worried about that now than I would have before.
Yeah. Last
thing I want to do is bring COVID home and give it to my parents and then get really sick or something like that.
Yeah, amen.
So yeah, we're prepping the car again, trying to improve it all the time and trying to get it as close to the pointy end of the or I should say, keep it as close to the pointy end of the field as we can. So whenever that border opens up, we say, hey, we're ready to go, and hopefully we get there and put it on pole when we get there.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Oh,
Thought it was us. No, we thought it was us.
No, low battery mode. We're all right. We got lots of charge.
Okay.
all right,
Whew.
it's cool.
Is it worth looking at the comments? Because it looks like there's some
Sure, why
some
not?
pretty cool stuff. I don't
Let's
know.
check it out.
Adventure.
Thanks for the information, Gold Digger. Thanks for watching. Let's see. Mid Ohio School runs the TSX with tires and brakes. I had an instructor in one of the TSXs with passengers eat me alive in my twin turbo 350Z. So definitely a good base car. That's interesting.
And then I don't know what the third one is, but I thought at least the one you read was interesting.
He's talking to James. He says Area 27 in BC is a great place, almost 5 kilometer track, very beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen videos of that. Looks great, but man, a long haul from here.
What is Area 27? Is it like a base or something like that?
No, it's a track. They just named it that. It's kind of like a semi-private track in British Columbia. But
Yeah,
that's
it's West
like
Coast.
Yeah, like 2,500 miles or something like that for us. So
Well, the next time you swing through Kentucky, maybe
we'll just pop over there on the way
maybe
down.
just pop up this way.
On no sleep.
Yeah,
Oh,
no
man.
kidding.
Oh God.
So anybody else you want to shout out? You want to say anything to? I mean, you have the floor. I mean, I don't know how many people are listening, but
You guys, obviously.
Thank you. Thank you.
And hopeful for things that might come in the future
Yeah.
from you guys as well
Yeah.
that we're not talking about yet.
I know. Yeah, not yet. We're it looks good. All right, well, this is too inside. We'll talk about this afterwards. But yeah, but what I will say is I want to give James some props, and this is important because I'm putting it on the record so everybody can see. So, people often say to us, "Oh, I want this, I want that, I want you to make this, I want you to build that." And James and Chris and some of the guys that we were with earlier that were really starting to compete in modern time attack events. They gave us a lot of feedback, and a lot of the feedback that we've received from them, we use to make designs better, make fitments better, change a lot of things that maybe we felt would enhance the product for you. And James was one of the first ones that came to us and said, "Hey, look, we need to have an 18 by 11, and we need to have it at this offset." And so James is really one of the driving forces behind us doing the 18 by 11, and it was something that got us started with thinking. But the feedback that we get from a lot of our drivers is the things that we use to continuously make product better. So I'm just giving you I'm just giving James the props for that was you.
I really appreciate that. I mean, and I appreciate it and apologize for it at the same time because I know I went at you pretty aggressively on that 18 by 11.
Yeah. This guy's always like, I think we should do that. I was like, look, would you stop? Like, this is ridiculous.
I'm not stopping.
I know.
Nope, not interested in stopping at all.
Every time we start something, he comes up with some other thing that he needs, and I'm like, come on, man, it's half an inch. I'm like, you can't just no, we got. I'm like, this is getting exhausting. Like, meanwhile, sometimes I go in and I'm like, oh, we're gonna build this wheel, and everybody's like, what are you gonna put that on? I'm like, oh, front of a TSX. It's terrible.
But to be fair, when I asked you about some more 18 by 11s recently, you said you didn't have any left. So,
well, I don't know if you've paid attention to this global port thing. Home Depot doesn't have PVC fittings.
Fair.
Fair. But yeah, no. But the 18 by 11, it's offered people some good look on some of the cars that they're running on track. Also, it's become a size that finds its way onto rears of some of the bigger cars like the Z's and the G's and stuff like that. So, that's always a good look. So, you're racing this year. We're just not sure when you'll be in the States.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be racing up here regardless with Northern Speed and CSCS and Ontario Time Attack and stuff like that. Probably a little bit with the CASC wheel-to-wheel series. We'll be kind of getting to everything that we can, but definitely we're going to be prepped and packed and ready to go for whenever they say that border is open. We'll be waiting there they say it opened at 11:59. We'll be there at 11:55 waiting for that to open.
Right. Yeah, they'll turn you around.
Yeah. They'll be like, "You're way too excited.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with you, man. You need to go home."
We don't know if you know this. It doesn't open for 4 minutes. You're going to have to go home and try again. Well, listen, thanks for taking the time to come chat with us. It's good always talking with you. It's great talking with people that have a lot of knowledge that they can share with anybody who chooses to listen to our podcast. And, listen, I think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to find affordable methods to be able to compete in motorsports. I also think that there's a lot of opportunity to look at where people have been and some of the things they've done and not only learn from it, but really use it as a springboard to what could be something way better down the future, in the future,
Absolutely. I mean, I went to my first track day and I didn't think anything of it, but, because of different events, making it kind of easy access and stuff like that, and, friendly and encouraging to have fun and stuff like that, I've been lucky to do some pretty cool things with some pretty cool people, and I feel very lucky for that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point to end on, and I appreciate your time. Hey, do the whole social thing. Tell everybody where to find you and your program and cool pictures.
People, so on Instagram it's time_attack_type R. Right. People always laugh that I mean, it makes sense. I should have probably put an underscore between type and R, so everyone always makes fun of me that it's Time Attack Typer.
Right.
So there's
But people mess with you for everything. Isn't that what you said?
But I will
everything. I guess I'm really fast at typing.
Yeah, I was going to say, in James's defense, he can type really fast. Like when he writes, "Can I please have a bigger wheel?" He writes it really fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I did not know that about you.
And can I just have it at a 12 offset, a 3 offset?
And can I have it at X width?
Right. Yeah. Well, you never know. You never know.
And we do a little bit of Facebook too, but not as much. I mean, most of my content is on Instagram, but we do Time Attack Type R on Facebook, and then the Bullet TSX on Facebook as well. I never made a TSX specific Instagram page because I feel like it's hard to get the second one going and then go back and forth. It's easier just to kind of promote both on one.
Right, and I had a fear that you would get a whole different following of people that really enjoyed how fast they could type.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Low battery.
Sorry, it was just 10%. We're still good.
It's probably a good time for him to send him off.
Anyhow.
Let him charge his phone.
Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. We appreciate it. And I know for me, we look forward to actually getting you down here to some events.
Well, I appreciate that. We're chomping at the bit, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long year and a half, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you so much, guys, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been super fun.
Until
Liar,
next time.
But I like it. All right, James, take care. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good day.
Later.
Bye, everyone.
So that's it. I mean, listen, I think it was cool having James here. I always like when I take off my headphones because I can almost hear myself at that point. But that's it. Listen, make sure that you check out this Friday. We'll be dropping another piece of content. I can tell you what it is, but I don't really know. So
it's going to be a wheel tech of some sort.
Oh, cool. So learn something this Friday. That should be your goal. Learn something this Friday, and next Friday we'll try to give you something that's not nearly as learning. And don't forget to check out the Hypers Right from last week. That was there. Look at the podcast from last week. Get all triggered. Make some comments. Try to keep them friendly. I mean, remember, I have a soul. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, I'm a wheel guy, and you guys, like, sometimes get a little aggressive.
It's funny because just to quickly say that when you first mentioned the whole thing about getting triggered, I thought you were talking about the car storage video.
No.
Okay, all right, because I heard that was also
Yeah.
a very triggering topic.
If you didn't see that one, we put out this little video. It's just supposed to be a fun little piece about 5 different ways you could store your car. People got all upset. You're a wheel company. What do you know about storing your car? Who cares? Who cares? Like, why does that bother you so much? Like, jeez. Anyhow, that's it for this one. We will catch you back here next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Take care. Have a good week.